My son was out of milk. I had $3 in my bank account. In desperation, I texted my brother for a $50 loan, but I sent it to the wrong number. A stranger replied, a billionaire CEO named Julian Maddox. The next morning, he sent me $5,000. Then he offered me a job to go undercover in his company and expose a conspiracy that could get me killed. He said he needed a stranger he could trust. I had no idea that this one wrong text was about to plunge me into a world of corporate espionage, betrayal, and a choice that would change my life forever. Mark, just $50. Leo's out of milk. I swear I'll pay you back on Friday. I hurriedly typed the message on my phone, the screen a spiderweb of cracks under the dim, sickly yellow light of our tiny apartment. My fingers were trembling, partly from the cold and partly from the familiar, gnawing anxiety that had become my constant companion. I was curled up on a worn-out sofa, its faded fabric a map of our struggles. Beside me, my son, Leo, not yet 2 years old, slept in an old, creaky crib, his soft, steady breathing the only rhythm that kept the crushing silence at bay. The last can of formula was empty. The electricity and water bills were a threatening stack on the kitchen counter. My bank account, I knew without looking, held only a few spare coins. The message to my brother was my last resort, a final humiliating white flag of surrender. I hit send. A few seconds later, the screen lit up, but it wasn't Mark's name. It was a cold, impersonal notification that made my heart plummet into my stomach. Number not saved in contacts. I froze. The message, my desperate private plea, had been launched into the void and delivered to a complete stranger. A hot wave of shame washed over me. I quickly typed an apology, my thumbs fumbling on the cracked screen. So sorry, wrong number. Please disregard. But before I could toss the phone aside and bury my face in a pillow, a reply appeared. It was short, sharp, and utterly unexpected. It's okay. My name is Julian. If Leo needs milk, I can help with $50. Do you need anything else? I stared at the message, my mind racing. Julian. Who was this person? A prankster? Or worse, a predator sensing vulnerability? My past had taught me to be wary of kindness from strange men. My ex-husband, with his honeyed promises, had left me and Leo with nothing but debts and a profound mistrust of the world. My pride, a small but stubborn flame, flared up. I typed back, each letter a tiny shield. Thank you for the offer, but I don't take money from strangers. I will figure it out myself. The reply was almost instantaneous. I understand, but a child shouldn't have to wait for pride. I'll send the $50, no strings attached. It's your choice whether you accept it or not. I looked over at Leo, at the soft, innocent curls glowing faintly in the dim light. My eyes blurred, not from sadness, but from the bone-deep exhaustion of a single mother who had been fighting a losing battle for too long. My pride was a luxury I couldn't afford when my son was hungry. I didn't respond, but my heart, a compass knocked off course, wavered between suspicion and a desperate, dangerous flicker of hope. The next morning, I was woken by a series of notifications that nearly made me drop my phone. It wasn't a notification for 50, it was for 5,000. A direct transfer from an account under the name Julian Maddox. I stood frozen in the middle of my tiny living room, the cold floorboards doing nothing to cool the frantic heat in my chest. $5,000. It was enough to pay 3 months' rent, to pay all our bills, to buy formula, diapers, and even a new winter coat for Leo. It was a lifeline. It was a miracle. It was terrifying. Who was this man? And what, dear God, what did he want from me? Just then, the doorbell rang, a sharp, jarring sound in our quiet morning. A delivery man stood on my doorstep with 4 large, unmarked boxes. I hesitantly brought them inside. They were filled with the highest quality baby clothes, expensive educational toys, and a 6-month supply of the premium organic formula I had only ever dared to glance at through the grocery store window. Tucked inside one of the boxes was a handwritten letter. The penmanship was firm, masculine, but the words carried a surprising warmth. Leo deserves more than just the basics. I hope this helps your family find some breathing room. Julian. I sank to the floor, the letter trembling in my hand, my mind a storm of confusion and fear. I opened my laptop and with trembling fingers typed Julian Maddox into the search bar. The results hit me like a physical wave. Julian Maddox, the enigmatic CEO of Omnigen, a leading and highly private biotech corporation. Article after article described him as a brilliant but reclusive man, a widower who had made significant, always anonymous charitable contributions, and who fiercely avoided the media spotlight. None of it answered the one question burning in my mind. Why me? I found the number and called it, my voice cold with a suspicion I couldn't hide. Mr. Maddox, I appreciate what you've done, but I cannot accept $5,000 or these boxes. I don't know you, and I refuse to be indebted to anyone. His voice on the other end was deep and calm, like a still lake on a windless day. I don't expect anything in return, Miss Callahan. My heart stopped. He knew my name. How do you know who I am? I don't make a habit of sending thousands of dollars to strangers without doing my due diligence, he admitted, his voice still calm. Your name was attached to the bank account. I ran a simple background check. I know you used to work as a senior auditor for a top firm. I also know you have a degree in biology. He paused. Omnigen needs someone with your unique skill set, an outsider. Come and meet with me. We can talk about a job. I was stunned into silence, my heart fluttering like a trapped bird. Why should I trust you? Because my company is in trouble, he said, and for the first time I heard a crack in his calm facade, a hint of vulnerability. Come to Omnigen tomorrow. If you're not interested after we talk, I will have everything returned and you will never hear from me again. I hung up, my mind spinning. My past life, the one where I was a sharp, respected auditor, felt like a dream. My biology degree, once my pride, was now just a framed piece of paper gathering dust. I was a single mom, surviving on welfare and the occasional freelance bookkeeping job. Julian Maddox's invitation felt like a door being kicked open in a house that had been sealed shut for years. It was tempting. It was suspicious. It was, quite possibly, my only way out. That night, I lay beside Leo, listening to the steady, comforting rhythm of his breathing. I opened a small wooden box on my nightstand and took out a faded letter from my late sister, Sarah. The ink was blurred from my own past tears, but I knew the words by heart. Find the light, Lena. Even when it's dark, don't be afraid to take a chance. Sarah, the one who had taught me about pride, but also about courage, was gone too soon. I put on the simple silver locket she had left me, a constant, cool weight against my skin. Okay, Sarah, I'll try. For Leo.
The next morning, I put on the only wrinkle-free blouse I owned, left Leo with my reluctant but loyal neighbor, and took the bus to the financial district. The Omnigen headquarters towered above me, a monument of gleaming glass and steel. It was designed to make people like me feel small, like a grain of sand before an ocean. A woman with a professional but distant smile greeted me. Miss Callahan, welcome to Omnigen. Mr. Maddox is expecting you. I stepped into his office. It was a vast, sun-drenched space with a panoramic view of the city. Julian Maddox stood to greet me. He was tall, but not imposing, and his eyes held a deep, defining sorrow that no amount of wealth could hide. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice the same calm baritone from the phone. I'll be direct. I'd like you to work for us, temporarily, in the internal audit department. We have some financial irregularities. I need an objective set of eyes, someone with no prior loyalties within this company. Why me? I asked again, the question still burning. You only know me from a single accidental text message. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. Sometimes, he said, his gaze steady as a lighthouse beam, a wrong number is the only thing that can lead you to the right person. I trust my instincts, Miss Callahan, and they tell me you are the person I need. He then led me down the hall to a bright, cheerful room I hadn't noticed before. It was a nursery, fully equipped with a small bed, colorful toys, and a beautiful mural of a forest on the wall. If you agree to take this job, he said quietly, This room is for your son, Leo. We have the best child care staff on site. You will never have to worry about him while you work." I looked around the room, at the soft blankets and the stuffed animals, and my carefully constructed walls of suspicion began to crumble. I thought of Leo, of all the times I'd had to leave him with neighbors, of the nights I'd cried because I couldn't afford a better life for him. "I'll do it," I said, my voice firm, meeting his gaze. "But let's be clear, I'm doing this because I need a job and my son needs care. This is a business transaction." Julian nodded, a flicker of what looked like respect in his sorrowful eyes. "That's all I ask." I began the next day. I was given a small, windowless office and a computer terminal. And as I began to dig, I quickly realized I had stepped into something far more dangerous than just financial irregularities. A shell company named Viridian Dynamics appeared again and again, linked to multi-million-dollar transactions, but with no contracts, no invoices, no paper trail. In a private meeting a week later, Julian handed me an encrypted USB drive, his voice low and grim. "I suspect our chief financial officer, Marcus Thorne, is embezzling on a massive scale. But he's brilliant. He's covered his tracks perfectly. I need irrefutable proof." I held the small, cold piece of metal in my hand. It felt like a ticking bomb. "I'll try," I said, my own voice steady, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. I had uncovered minor fraud in my past career, but this was a different league. This was a war. And I, a struggling single mother who had accidentally texted a billionaire for $50, had just been drafted to the front lines. I sat in that small, sterile office, the glow from my computer screen casting long shadows across the walls. The numbers on the spreadsheets moved quietly, like silent, deadly soldiers, but beneath them I could feel a dangerous undertow, pulling me deeper into a conspiracy I was only beginning to understand. The USB drive Julian had given me was a key to a hidden kingdom of lies. I began my work, not just as an auditor, but as a biologist, the training from my long-forgotten degrees suddenly snapping into sharp focus. I saw the numbers not as figures, but as strands of corporate DNA. Each transaction was a genetic sequence, and somewhere in that code, a toxic mutation was hiding. Viridian Dynamics, the shell company, was the epicenter. The money flowed through it, millions of dollars, washed clean of any identifying markers. But I found the tell. A subtle digital fingerprint. Every single one of the fraudulent transactions, no matter which department they originated from, had been approved using the same encrypted, untraceable device. It was a sophisticated loophole, designed by a master. I created a password-protected folder on my computer, a digital vault I named the Thorne Evidence. Each piece of proof was a small stone, carefully stacked to build a wall against the lies. But I knew that wall also marked a dangerous line. One afternoon, Julian appeared at my office door, his face a mask of calm, but his eyes betraying a deep-seated worry. "What have you found?" he asked. I turned the screen toward him. "Viridian isn't just a shell company. It's a black hole. Money goes in and it vanishes. And your chief financial officer, Marcus Thorne, is the one holding the key." He nodded grimly. He sat in the chair across from me, the late afternoon sunlight cutting across his face, revealing fine lines of stress and past wounds. "I've been betrayed before," he said, his voice low, as if recounting a ghost story. "A trusted partner in my first company. He embezzled millions. It wasn't just about the money. He destroyed my trust in people." He looked at me, his gaze intense. "That's why I chose you, Lena. You're an outsider. You have no allegiances here." The wall of suspicion between us thinned a little more. "I've been betrayed too," I said softly, my hand instinctively going to the locket at my neck. "The man I thought I loved, Leo's father, he left us without a word. I don't want my son to grow up in a world where lies are more powerful than the truth." "Then we have a common goal," he said. "But be careful. Marcus Thorne is not just a thief. He's a master manipulator. Marcus Thorne was a man who wore a smile like a sharp, tailored suit. His eyes were cold, calculating, but his voice was as smooth as velvet. He moved through the company like a phantom, his influence quiet but lethal. I saw it in the way board members deferred to him, in the way junior executives seemed both to admire and fear him. He began to notice me. At first it was just polite nods in the hallway. Then he started stopping by my office. "Miss Callahan, I hear you're doing a fantastic job. If you ever need anything, any resources, my door is always open." It was a test, an offer of allegiance, a subtle threat. I would just smile politely and say, "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. I have everything I need."
The real battle, I knew, was for the loyalty of Julian's own chief of staff, a highly competent but ambitious woman named Diana. One evening, as I was working late, Diana walked into my office holding a cup of coffee. "Still at it, Callahan?" she asked, her tone a careful blend of casual and probing. I remembered Julian's warning, "Don't trust anyone, not even Diana." But as I looked into her eyes, I saw not hostility, but a deep, simmering conflict. "I'm just looking for the truth," I answered calmly. "Have you ever wondered why a company this successful has so many financial black holes?" Diana was silent for a long moment. Then, before she walked out, she said quietly, "Be careful, Lena. Marcus Thorne doesn't like people who ask too many questions." My days became a blur of numbers and secrets, but my nights belonged to Leo. He was my anchor, my guiding light. He was the reason I was fighting. One afternoon, he scribbled all over one of my work notebooks with a bright red crayon. It was a chaotic mess of lines, a child's random art. But to me, it was a masterpiece. It was a symbol of the innocent world I was trying to protect. Julian and I devised a plan, a trap. We created a phantom project, a fake memo detailing a massive, secret transaction with Viridian Dynamics. The memo was designed to be irresistible bait. It was circulated through the internal system, but only a handful of senior executives, including Marcus, had access. I installed a tracking program to monitor every single interaction with the file. To help, Julian brought in an outside consultant, a former FBI cyber crimes investigator named Anya. She was a woman with silver-dyed short hair and eyes as sharp as blades. "Julian told me about you," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "He suspected Marcus for a long time, but he's a ghost. No hard evidence. You're the one who found his shadow." Anya helped me encrypt the evidence, creating a secure backup on an off-site server, completely beyond Omnigen's reach. "Now," she said with a grim smile, "we wait for the snake to take the bait." The tension in the office became a thick, suffocating fog. Marcus grew more suspicious. I received an anonymous email, its message cold and direct. "Don't dig too deep unless you're ready to lose everything." I wasn't afraid. I had already lost everything once. Now, I had everything to fight for. The turning point came from the one person I least expected, Diana. She walked into my office one evening, closed the door, and placed a USB drive on my desk. "I'm not on your side," she said, her voice low and steady, "and I'm not on his. I'm on the side of this company. He's going to destroy it." Her face was pale, but her eyes were resolute. "This is his personal drive. It contains the original, unencrypted transaction logs for Viridian. And something else. Something you need to see." She turned and left without another word. I plugged in the drive. It contained everything, the smoking gun. But as I scrolled through the files, my blood ran cold. There was another folder, one labeled with a name I recognized, my ex-husband, the father who had abandoned me and Leo. The files inside told a horrifying story. Marcus Thorne hadn't just been embezzling from Omnigen. He had a side business, corporate espionage, and one of his clients, years ago, had been my ex-husband's company. He had paid Marcus to dig up dirt on his competitors. It was all there, the payments, the correspondence.
It was the money from that dirty deal that had allowed my ex to disappear and start a new life, leaving me with nothing. Marcus Thorne hadn't just betrayed Julian. He was indirectly responsible for the destruction of my own life. This was no longer just a job. This was personal. That night, Julian made the decision. He moved me and Leo to a small, secure house in the suburbs, protected by a discreet security team. As he stood at the doorway, his eyes were filled with a concern that went beyond an employer and his employee. "You're not alone in this, Lena, I promise." I nodded, feeling a small, unfamiliar flame of trust begin to stir in my chest. The night before the board meeting, I sat by Leo's bed, watching him sleep. I reached out and brushed a curl from his forehead. "I don't know what's coming, baby, but I promise you this. I will never stop fighting for the kind of world you deserve."
The next morning, I stood outside the main boardroom at Omnigen, my heart pounding like a war drum. The room was packed with board members and senior executives. Marcus, dressed in a flawless suit, his confident smile a grotesque mask, sat in the front row. I took a deep breath, my eyes finding Julian's across the room. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. I began to speak, my voice shaky at first, but growing stronger with every word. "I am not here to ask you to trust me," I said, my voice ringing out in the silent room. "I am here to ask you to look at the data." The large screen behind me came to life. The Viridian transactions, Marcus's access logs, the emails. Each piece of evidence was a hammer blow, cracking the facade of his deception. The board members murmured, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning horror. Marcus stood up abruptly, his voice sharp with manufactured outrage. "This is a baseless smear campaign. Ms. Callahan is a temporary contractor with a personal vendetta." But before he could continue, I clicked to the next slide. It was a copy of a bank transfer from my ex-husband's company to a shell corporation owned by Marcus Thorne. "This is not just about Omnigen," I said, my voice cold and clear. "This is about a pattern of corruption that has destroyed lives, including my own." The room was in an uproar. For the first time, Marcus Thorne lost his composure. He scanned the room for allies but found only cold, accusing stares. He collapsed into his chair, his face ashen, a king dethroned in his own court. After the live-streamed meeting that sent shockwaves through the financial world, I walked out of the boardroom, my legs trembling, but my heart steady. At the reception desk, the woman who had once greeted me with polite indifference now looked at me with awe. She handed me a small folded note. Inside it simply said, "Thank you." A few months later, I stood in that same boardroom, but this time as the newly appointed director of internal audit. "We are not just auditing finances," I told the board, my voice ringing with a newfound authority. "We are auditing trust." That evening, Julian found me in my new, larger office, the one with the windows overlooking the glittering city. "You did it, Lena," he said, his voice soft. "But I have another proposal for you. Take an afternoon off, anywhere you want." We drove to a small, quiet park by the river. Leo, who had been brought by his new full-time nanny, ran laughing across the grass. Julian and I sat on a wooden bench, the silence between us comfortable and peaceful. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of my first desperate text message. "Accidents aren't always accidents," he said, his eyes shining with an emotion I was finally ready to see. I think it was fate." I smiled, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. I said, "You helped me when I needed it most, but I don't want to just be someone who was rescued. I want to be myself." He looked at me, his gaze holding a promise that went beyond the corporate world. "I want you and Leo to be my family," he said softly, "if you're ready." I didn't answer right away. I looked at my son, playing freely, without a care in the world. I thought of my journey,
from a desperate single mother to a corporate whistleblower, from a wrong number to a war for the truth. "Ask me again," I said, a playful smile on my lips, "but in person, no more texts." He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that reached his sorrowful eyes and made them shine. And in that moment, a new world opened up for both of us, a world built not on chance or circumstance, but on the brave and deliberate choice to find the light even in the darkest of rooms.
Perhaps we will not see you again, so subscribe to this channel to listen to more interesting stories.